Welcome back, everyone. This is Radio Free Market. I'm your host, Michael McKay, and Professor Don Boudreaux. We were just talking about this famous comment by Milton Friedman that he thought that because of the welfare state, more open immigration was not possible, and you were commenting on that. Would you please expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, my main point is that Friedman was he was very weak in thinking this through, because most immigration restrictions take the form of preventing immigrants from working, or trying to prevent immigrants from working, which, by the way, also puts a dampening effect on some American citizens and some foreigners with green cards from working, because if documentation isn't there, if someone lost their green card, for example, or if an employer is worried that, a man named Gonzalez, who was, from Arizona, but, maybe looks like he may be from Mexico, to the extent that employers are worried about being penalized for unknowingly hiring illegal immigrants, then that puts a dampening effect even on the employment prospects for some Americans. So that's another way in which immigration restrictions affect opportunity and freedom of Americans themselves. But look, the welfare state needs, again, we're assuming the welfare state's a given, right, here for this conversation. The welfare state needs resources. And where do you get resources? You get resources from workers. Right? So even if there is a number of immigrants are coming to America in order just to suck off the welfare state, right, then they at least have to be offset against those immigrants who come here to work. And it very well could be, in fact, the evidence the evidence is pretty strong that it is the case, that the immigrants who come here to work, by adding a net amount to the economic pie and adding to tax revenues, actually pay for whatever additional burdens on the welfare state might be created by immigration.
So, one of the things about this welfare argument is that it's actually not the real concern. The real concern is jobs. People are concerned that their jobs are going to be taken over, and that the immigrants are going to compete and maybe take away the jobs from native-born Americans. Would you comment on that?
Yeah, in a free economy, or an economy that's even reasonably free, like ours, at least last time I looked, maybe it's changed within the last 10 minutes, but even in a reasonably free economy, jobs are created for people who want them. Entrepreneurs find opportunities to produce things, and they hire workers. In 1950, the civilian labor force in the United States was about 60 million people. Today, it's about 145 million people. And so the number of people in the labor force has much more than doubled just in the past 60 years. And the number of jobs has more than doubled in the past 60 years. And, by the way, it's not just immigrants who are entering to America to get jobs. Think about all the women in the post-World War II era who've entered the workforce. Mm-hmm. There wasn't, as far as I remember, any great outcry about, women entering the workforce are going to take jobs away from men. It didn't happen. What happens when more people enter the workforce is that, as I said earlier, the division of labor deepens, specialization changes, the way we work changes, and that makes us all wealthier. And so when immigrants come to America, they make us wealthier because they expand the workforce, which increases specialization, which is the ultimate source of wealth for a nation, as Adam Smith explained. And so again, even if some handful of immigrants are themselves a net drain on the welfare state, that drain must be counted against the larger additions to the tax base, and more importantly to the economy, by the larger number of immigrants who come here to work, and who work honestly and work hard.
Okay. Now, you had written that a lot of the real problem is the prohibitions on immigrants finding legal employment. And, one of the biggest complaints that you hear repeated over and over again in common coffee shop conversation is that immigrants overuse hospital emergency rooms. Is this related to them being paid in cash?
Yes, of course. I mean, whenever I hear that complaint, I go, duh. Yeah, you know, the, first of all, illegal immigrants are not allowed to work at all, obviously, lawfully. Even many legal immigrants have severe restrictions on where they can work and for whom they can work and how much they can be paid, right? And so here we have a class of people who are discriminated against unfairly in their employment opportunities. Well, is it any wonder then that, that first of all, that many of them cannot afford the kinds of health care that they would be able to afford were they able to work legally? Secondly, most of us get our health care through employer, tax-exempt, tax-deductible employer-provided health premium payments. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you're illegal and you're being paid in cash, then your employer is not going to sign you up for such a health insurance program because it'll expose that employer to being prosecuted and fined by the government.
Sure.
So therefore, these cash employees, they have no health insurance. They have no health insurance not because they don't want health insurance. They have no health insurance because to get affordable health insurance would expose them as being, quote, unquote, illegal. Therefore, when they become ill, it's not surprising at all that they go to the emergency room because emergency rooms are required by statute not to turn away anyone who comes to them. And they don't ask any questions. And so if you go to an emergency room, you don't need to show an insurance card. You get treated. So it's not surprising that it is a fact that immigrants tend to use hospital emergency rooms in numbers disproportionate to their size of the population. But that's an artifact of the immigration restrictions. There's nothing natural about Mexicans who, or Hispanic people who like to go to emergency rooms. It happens because of the restrictions.